This millionaire told his fiancée he was bankrupt to test her love. Her reaction shocked him. Under the glittering chandeliers of the Stanford Court Hotel in San Francisco, guests sipped fine champagne, celebrating the engagement of Jonathan Hale, a millionaire tech entrepreneur lauded for his cutthroat business sense. Leaning against a marble pillar, Jonathan observed his fiancée, Charlotte Brooks, gracefully greeting well-wishers. Their love story seemed perfect until a subtle doubt gnawed at him. Did Charlotte truly love him, or was she dazzled by his wealth? Determined to test her sincerity, he devised a ruse that would send shockwaves through both their lives. Little did he expect that the night he confessed, "I'm bankrupt," would unravel secrets neither had guessed and threaten to destroy their bond forever. Jonathan Hale never planned to be haunted by suspicion about Charlotte Brooks' motives. At 32, he'd soared to dizzying wealth, founding Hale Innovations, a software firm specializing in next-gen data analytics. Early success brought lavish penthouses, sports cars, and the attention of countless admirers. By the time he met Charlotte at a tech conference charity ball, he was entrenched in a world of glitz and polished smiles. From the onset, Charlotte seemed refreshingly unimpressed by his money. She worked as a marketing consultant, ambitious, graceful. Their first coffee date felt shockingly genuine, her curiosity about him fueling a sense of ease he rarely found. Weeks turned into months, culminating in an idyllic proposal by the Golden Gate Bridge. Yet, despite the romance, Jonathan battled a whisper of doubt. He'd encountered too many opportunists, feigning love for a slice of his empire. Charlotte seemed different, yet fear lingered. Could she, too, be charmed by wealth alone? As their engagement soared toward a grand wedding, that doubt intensified. A fleeting conversation with a suspicious friend, or perhaps a tabloid cynicism, fueled the fear. He found himself imagining a scenario. What if she believed I was broke? Would she remain? That single question, once lodged in his mind, became an obsession, leading to a plan that risked everything he'd built. To quell his nagging anxiety, Jonathan devised a radical test. He'd orchestrate a convincing scenario that he'd lost most of his fortune through a fabricated lawsuit, bad investments, and a meltdown of his key assets. Only a handful of trusted confidants at Hale Innovations would be in on the secret. He'd then gauge Charlotte's reaction to the news. If she truly loved him, she'd remain supportive. If not, he wrestled with guilt over the deception. But the dread of stumbling into a hollow marriage proved stronger. Late one night, working alone in his penthouse study, Jonathan typed out a script. The legal notice he'd show Charlotte, the urgent calls he'd stage with frantic employees, the meltdown story he'd weave about a rival firm crushing them. He felt a swirl of adrenaline and shame. Was it fair to trap her in a lie? Yet he rationalized, better a short-term lie than a lifetime of uncertainty. He recruited his longtime friend, Neil Landon, the CFO at Hale Innovations. Neil balked at the scheme, calling it extreme. Jonathan insisted, explaining he needed absolute clarity. The plan was set. In 3 days, right after a large investor dinner, Jonathan would reveal that an unforeseen crisis had bankrupted him. He wondered if Charlotte would comfort him or vanish, never suspecting that Charlotte, too, held secrets capable of upending this dangerous game. On a crisp Friday evening, Jonathan hosted a lavish engagement dinner for Charlotte at the Redwood Terrace, an exclusive club perched above the San Francisco skyline. Guests included his board members, a few close friends, and Charlotte's family. She arrived in a flowing emerald dress, radiant with joy. Jonathan kissed her cheek, trying to ignore the pang of guilt for what he'd soon attempt. The dinner unfolded with clinking glasses, gourmet courses, and toasts about their upcoming wedding. Charlotte's parents, Howard and Evelyn Brooks, beamed with pride. They found Jonathan charming, albeit obviously wealthy. Meanwhile, Neil Landon mingled, throwing uneasy glances at Jonathan. He dreaded the charade about to unfold. In a dim corner, Jonathan quietly told Neil, "Tomorrow, I'll stage the meltdown. Be ready to confirm the story if Charlotte asks." Neil frowned but nodded. The music swelled, and the dessert, a tower of chocolate-laced pastries, arrived. Everyone marveled, praising Jonathan's generosity. Amid the festive ambience, Charlotte whispered her love, eyes shining. Jonathan forced a smile, each moment intensifying his conflict. He recalled how Charlotte once described her dream wedding, a modest vow exchange, not an extravagant affair. Was that not proof she wasn't gold-digging? Am I making a mistake? He wondered, but he'd come too far. In the hush of the night's end, he steeled himself. By tomorrow, the test would begin. The next afternoon, Charlotte arrived at Jonathan's penthouse for a simple weekend plan, maybe brunch, a stroll. She found him pacing the living room, phone in hand, face drawn. The moment she entered, he hung up, exhaling shakily. She asked what was wrong. He eyed her, stepping into the performance. "There's no easy way to say this," he began. "We've lost a major lawsuit. My investments are tied up. I could be facing bankruptcy. Everything's collapsing." His words trembled with feigned panic, though genuine guilt tinted them. Charlotte paled, setting down her purse. "What do you mean? That can't be. Didn't you secure new funding?" Jonathan shook his head, describing a contrived scenario, a breach of contract lawsuit from a major partner, freezing assets. He claimed the stock plummeted, banks threatened foreclosures on properties. She listened wide-eyed, her concern intensifying. "But your advisors?" He maintained the ruse, citing betrayals, unstoppable legal tangles. He clutched her hand, face lined with desperation. "I'm so sorry. This changes everything. 1. I might lose the penthouse, my entire fortune. We might have to postpone the wedding or scale back drastically. I understand if you want to reconsider." His heart hammered. This was the moment. If she flinched or showed horror, it'd confirm his suspicion. But as her eyes filled with tears, her reaction wasn't disgust. It was heartbreak and unwavering support. She whispered, "Jonathan, the first, so sorry. I don't care about the money. We'll figure this out together." He was stunned. He'd expected doubt or anger. Instead, she drew him into an embrace, offering comfort. The script in his head had not predicted this. 2 hours later, they sat on the couch, Charlotte rummaging for solutions. She proposed selling her engagement ring to help with immediate legal fees or moving into a smaller place. "We don't need a fancy wedding, just each other," she insisted. Jonathan, reeling, felt lumps of guilt roil in his stomach. "She's offering to part with her ring." He fought to maintain the facade. "I appreciate it, but it's not just about the ring. My entire empire might vanish." She clasped his hand. "Then we start fresh. I still love you, not your billions. I only need your presence." He nearly broke character, tears pricking his eyes. This was no gold digger fleeing at the sign of trouble. She was more supportive than he'd dreamed. Meanwhile, the phone rang. Neil Landon, calling to confirm the lawsuit meltdown as planned. He put it on speaker, letting Charlotte hear Neil's bleak updates. She listened, then comforted Jonathan, telling him not to give up. As the day ended, she refused to leave, ordering takeout so he wouldn't brood alone. They dined quietly, her presence warm and unwavering. Jonathan realized the test's results were conclusive. She genuinely loved him, with or without money. But a pang of shame gnawed. Why did I question her sincerity? The next question, should I reveal the ruse? Fear about betraying her trust overshadowed him. He decided to wait for the right moment, unaware how deeply this deception cut, and how future revelations would rattle them both. The morning after Charlotte's unwavering support, Jonathan found her in the penthouse kitchen, humming softly as she brewed coffee. She turned, face flushed, with a gentle smile. "I was thinking, maybe we postpone the wedding until this crisis is sorted. My parents will understand." Jonathan nodded, guilt surging. This was beyond what he'd expected. She was ready to sacrifice her dream wedding for him. Yet a swirl of dread formed. He needed to come clean. The lie weighed heavily, intensifying each moment she poured out genuine empathy. But fear reined him in. What if she feels betrayed, loses trust forever? At midday, Charlotte quietly left to run errands. Hours later, she returned with an odd expression. She'd bumped into a mutual acquaintance who revealed no public record of any lawsuit or stock meltdown. Puzzled, Charlotte confronted Jonathan. "I heard from an old friend that there's no sign of your rumored legal trouble. Is that possible?" His heart lurched. The moment of truth loomed. He stammered. "The system might not have posted it yet. It's complicated." She frowned. "Could it be your friend is misinformed? Or is something else going on?" Her eyes searched his face. He swallowed, guilt etched in every fiber. But he stuck to the narrative, claiming it was hush-hush. She hesitated, seeming half convinced, half suspicious. The tension soared, a ticking time bomb. Soon her suspicions would spark events that threatened to unravel all illusions. That evening, Charlotte met her best friend, Emma Phillips, at a cozy cafe in the Mission District. Over cappuccinos, Charlotte disclosed everything: Jonathan's alleged bankruptcy, the supportive stance she'd taken, her growing doubts about the story's authenticity. Emma listened, brow furrowed. "Girl, are you sure he's telling the truth? Why would there be no public record of such a huge lawsuit? Even hush settlements get rumored in business circles." Charlotte admitted the contradiction weighed on her. "But if he's lying, then what's the motive? He's always been so sincere, except about this meltdown." Emma posited. "Could he be testing you? Maybe he suspects you're after his money." The notion stung Charlotte. She'd once joked about how wealthy guys fear gold diggers. Could Jonathan be that paranoid? Reeling, Charlotte realized if Emma was right, Jonathan had manipulated her emotional loyalty. Anger flared. How dare he question my devotion? Yet heartbreak also seeped in. She loved him deeply, and this implied he never truly trusted her. Emma urged her to confront him directly or gather proof. Charlotte dreaded the confrontation, but resolved to discover the truth. If Jonathan had orchestrated a charade to measure her reaction, it was an immense betrayal. She left the cafe determined to face him prepared for whichever heartbreak or redemption their conversation might yield. Charlotte returned to Jonathan's penthouse late that night, bracing for a showdown. She found him in the living area, reviewing documents. He looked up, noticing her tense posture. "You okay?" he asked softly. She exhaled. "We need to talk." She cut straight to the point. "I suspect this bankruptcy might be fake." A friend said no sign of a lawsuit. Another friend said, "Maybe you're testing me." "Are you?" Stunned silence engulfed them. Jonathan's face paled, guilt flickering. She pressed. "If you fabricated this meltdown to see if I'd stay, that's cruel." "I bared my soul, offered to sell my ring to stand by you." "You took advantage of my love to test me." Her voice quivered with tears and anger. His mind scrambled for words. At length, with trembling breath, he confessed, "Yes, I was uncertain of your motives. I was afraid you loved my money, not me. So I staged the crisis. I never meant to hurt you. I needed to be sure." Her eyes flooded with pain. You never trusted me, even after all we shared. That's no love. It's manipulation. He tried to defend. I was terrified. Everyone wanted me for my fortune. I saw no other way. The heaviness in the room threatened to suffocate them both. She fought tears, voice cracking. You had a choice to trust me or ask me openly. Instead, you lied, and I can't unfeel that betrayal. She turned away, heartbreak etched across her face. He realized with a jolt that he might lose her. The test he'd set had ironically doomed them. The next morning found the penthouse quiet, tension thick, as Charlotte packed an overnight bag. She'd spent the night weeping in the guest room, ignoring Jonathan's attempts to apologize. Now, as dawn's light spilled across the sleek living space, she confronted him. I can't stay here, not while you see me as some suspect. I love you, but this is too big a breach of trust. His stomach twisted. He begged forgiveness. I was a fool, consumed by fear. Let me fix this. Don't go. But she shook her head, tears glinting. I need space. You destroyed my sense of closeness. Give me time to see if I can forgive. He watched helplessly as she walked out, ring left behind on a side table, a silent testament to shattered illusions. That day, gloom settled over Jonathan's existence. He retreated from phone calls, left tasks to Neil, ignoring messages from Morgan Stanley about final deal details. The test had indeed proven she loved him, but ironically, his deception had driven her away. He felt a hollow regret. What if I never see her again? Meanwhile, Charlotte found solace crashing at Emma's small apartment, tears unstoppable. She felt humiliated she had proven unwavering love, only to discover a manipulative plot. Now she questioned if everything his romantic gestures, wedding plans, was all overshadowed by suspicion. Sorrow overshadowed her future, uncertain if she'd ever reclaim faith in their bond. Days turned into a sluggish blur for Jonathan. He cancelled social engagements, ignoring invitations to final signings at Morgan Stanley. His staff grew alarmed at his disappearance from critical tasks. Neil confronted him, voice urgent. We're on the brink of concluding the biggest deal in your career. If you go AWOL, we might lose it. Jonathan, listless, responded, the deal feels meaningless if I've lost Charlotte. Neil pressed, look, fix your personal life if you can, but don't sabotage the entire company. Jonathan realized how deep he'd sunk into despair. However, he still couldn't face a future without Charlotte. Meanwhile, Morgan and Friedman's attempts to do damage control floundered. The rumor that Jonathan's fiancée left him post-fake meltdown circulated quietly among corporate circles, casting doubt on his stability. Charlotte, on her end, tried focusing on her marketing job, but heartbreak overshadowed her daily routine. Emma urged her to speak with Jonathan again. She resisted, insisting trust was broken. Yet late at night, she'd reread old messages from him, missing the closeness they'd shared. Baby steps. Could he truly regret his actions enough to rectify them? With each passing day, the question of whether they might salvage their bond became more acute. Meanwhile, the final Morgan Stanley deal signing loomed. Jonathan realized he must either step up or see everything crumble, business and personal life alike. 3 days before the Morgan Stanley signing, Neil handed Jonathan a note from Charlotte. She'd dropped it at reception. Jonathan's heart pounded reading her handwriting. Jonathan, I'm still hurt, but I can't deny I miss you. I need to see if we can salvage trust. Maybe we should talk, away from the city's glare. If you want the same, meet me at the Royal Palms Inn near the coast next Saturday at 4 p.m. No crowds, just us. Charlotte, relief and anxiety warred within him. At least she was open to conversation. He had one shot at redemption. But the schedule clashed with Morgan Stanley's final signing, slated for the same Saturday at 5 p.m. A wry twist of fate. Which do I choose? He realized the signing could be rescheduled an hour earlier if he tried, or he could skip the talk. But ignoring Charlotte risked losing her forever. He vowed to do both, finalize the deal swiftly, then dash to meet her. He called Neil, instructing the rescheduled signing at 2 p.m. Neil groaned at the last-minute change but complied. Meanwhile, Jonathan braced himself for a delicate dance, finalize a multi-million-dollar contract, then rushed to the Coastal Inn to beg forgiveness. If all went well, he might reclaim the love he so foolishly endangered. Come Saturday, Jonathan stood in Morgan Stanley's grand boardroom at 2 p.m. sharp, facing the bankers and legal teams. The atmosphere was formal but amicable. The final contract awaited his signature, capping months of negotiation. As he signed each page, satisfaction mingled with impatience. 4 p.m., Royal Palms Inn, must not be late. By 3:15, the ceremony concluded. Some staff offered champagne. He politely declined, offering swift handshakes, then apologized for leaving abruptly due to urgent personal matters. By 3:25, he was in his Tesla, speeding out of the city. The drive to the coast took about an hour, typically. He clenched the wheel, praying traffic was mild. The nerve-wracking race tested his dedication. If he arrived late, Charlotte might think he'd chosen business over her again. Fortune favored him. The roads were somewhat clear. He pulled into the Royal Palms Inn parking lot at 4:10, heart hammering. The inn was a quaint coastal retreat perched near rocky beaches. The ocean's roar faintly reached him as he stepped out, scanning for Charlotte. He found her seated on a wooden bench near the inn's garden, eyes on the horizon. Approaching, he noticed her tense posture. The moment she spotted him, her expression flickered with a swirl of hope and hurt. It's now or never, he thought, steeling himself for the hardest conversation of his life. Soft ocean breeze brushed their faces as Jonathan joined Charlotte on the bench. He began haltingly. I finished my deal early. I'm so sorry for everything. My test was a betrayal of your trust. I see that now. She studied him, tears glinting. I needed you to trust me from the start, not stage elaborate lies. He nodded, voice trembling. I know. I was so terrified of being used. But that's no excuse. You proved your sincerity the moment you stayed by my side, even offering your ring. I was blind, manipulative. I'm ashamed. She exhaled, tears slipping down her cheeks. I did love you wholeheartedly. Now I feel humiliated, but a part of me can't stop caring. He gently touched her hand. Let me rebuild your trust. I'd do anything to fix the damage. She weighed his sincerity. The ocean waves crashed behind them, a rhythmic hush. After a long pause, she murmured, "This can't be undone with words. If we proceed, it must be from honesty. No more secrets, no more tests." He nodded fervently. "I promise." Absolute transparency from now on. They locked eyes, a surge of old affection stirring. She leaned her head on his shoulder, letting tears fall. In that tender moment, they recognized the love that had survived his self-inflicted storm. While scars remained, the door for healing stood ajar. They agreed to move forward slowly, forging a deeper bond grounded in truth, not illusions. Over the following weeks, Jonathan and Charlotte took deliberate steps to rebuild their relationship. They resumed wedding planning, this time simplifying it, reflecting Charlotte's preference for a modest affair. Jonathan introduced her to the new philanthropic angle of his business, letting her weigh in. They spent evenings re-exploring each other's worlds, reading, cooking together, discussing philanthropic ideas. The facade that once overshadowed them dissolved, replaced by genuine vulnerability. In a quiet moment, Jonathan returned the engagement ring she'd left behind, kneeling in the penthouse living room. She accepted it, tears shimmering as he repeated a vow, "I love you for who you are, not for any test. Please marry me. No more illusions." She nodded, voice quavering. "Yes. Let's have a real start this time." They set a new wedding date 6 months away, giving them time to fully heal. Some tabloids tried stirring old drama about the fiancé who left, then returned. But Jonathan and Charlotte, armed with honesty, brushed it off. Their families, initially confused, ended up relieved that the couple found clarity. The Redwood Room fiasco with Morgan Stanley seemed ages ago. Even the bankruptcy test that nearly derailed them now felt like a cautionary tale. The path wasn't entirely smooth, as trust had to be rebuilt daily. But each step forward proved that love can endure even after the ugliest tests if both parties fight for it. Finally, the wedding day arrived, a serene morning at a small hillside chapel overlooking the Pacific. In attendance were close friends, immediate family, and a few business colleagues who'd become genuine supporters. No paparazzi, no over-the-top extravagance, just a heartfelt ceremony reflecting their renewed commitment. Charlotte wore a simple ivory gown, her mother beaming with pride. Jonathan, in a classic black suit, stood at the altar, heart pounding with gratitude that she had forgiven his transgression. He recalled the moment he'd faked bankruptcy, the tears in Charlotte's eyes. Now, real tears of joy adorned her face as she walked the aisle. At the front, they clasped hands, gazing into each other's eyes as the officiant led them in vows. "I vow to uphold truth, to nurture trust, to never let fear overshadow our bond," Jonathan declared, voice trembling. Charlotte repeated similar sentiments, referencing how adversity had tested but not broken them. Applause and soft weeping resonated from guests. With a triumphant kiss, they sealed their union authentically, free from illusions. Afterward, a modest reception took place in a nearby garden. They toasted with a few speeches, but mostly cherished the closeness of loved ones. Gone was the need for grand displays. They recognized the quiet majesty of a love proven through a near-catastrophic test, one that revealed their ultimate devotion. In the days following the wedding, Jonathan and Charlotte settled into a unified routine, still balancing corporate expansions at Warner Innovations with Charlotte's marketing work. But now a gentler approach guided them. Charlotte, forging her own path, sometimes consulted on philanthropic projects, bridging Jonathan's company with non-profits that help struggling families, a cause dear to her, since seeing how quickly fate can turn. Morgan Stanley's final investment in Warner Innovations soared, fueling expansions that included a social responsibility division. Neil Landon marveled at the shift, seeing Jonathan's newfound empathy in each strategic decision. The Redwood fiasco, once overshadowing everything, was now replaced by heartfelt business transformations that considered employees' well-being, local community ties, and transparency. They also supported underprivileged students in coding boot camps, a direct reflection of Charlotte's input. At charitable galas, they stood side by side, overshadowing cynical whispers with their sincere synergy. As time passed, the memory of Jonathan's fake bankruptcy test receded into private memory, a painful lesson that ironically forged a stronger bond. Sometimes, late at night, they'd reflect on how close they came to losing each other, only to find a deeper unity. Thus, the story of a millionaire's ill-advised plan to test his fiancée became a testament that genuine love can triumph over the darkest seeds of mistrust when humility, contrition, and unwavering devotion find their rightful place at the heart of a relationship. In the end, Jonathan Hale's secret scheme to feign financial ruin nearly destroyed the very love he longed to safeguard. Driven by fear of insincere devotion, he tested Charlotte Brooks's loyalty in the cruelest way, only to discover that her faithfulness ran deeper than any riches. Their bond, once overshadowed by suspicion and heartbreak, emerged stronger because Charlotte's support in his darkest hour was never about money. Though Jonathan's deception fractured her trust, their willingness to rebuild through honest conversation, heartfelt apologies, and genuine shared purpose revealed a partnership that soared above scandal. If this emotional journey of manipulation, redemption, and abiding love resonated with you, please give this video a like, share it with friends who believe in second chances, and subscribe to our channel. Your support fuels more stories that remind us how real commitment thrives, not on wealth but on vulnerability and respect, even if we must endure a storm of doubts to finally embrace the light of truth.